The speed to a decision is a great litmus test for how agile you are as an organization. But even in an agile team-based organization where decision-making is distributed, sometimes that decision maker is you. So, how good are you at making decisions? That's what today's guest Mattias Skarin will talk about. He's an agile coach working both with teams and management. One of his passions, as he describes it, is to challenge and inspire to practically explore and test new ideas. Mattias is also an appreciated speaker at conferences and an author. He's written the book Real World Kanban, Do Less, Accomplish More with Lean Thinking, and is a co-author of the book Kanban and Scrum, Making the Most of Both. Both are brilliant and well worth a read. Mattias, the screen is yours.
So how do you make your decisions? Have you ever thought about that? You probably make hundreds of decisions every day, but how do you arrive to your conclusion? So a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon this topic, and the more I started to study it, the more fascinated I became. There's a lot hiding underneath here. So, simple fact, a majority of people consider themselves more intelligent than average. So how did they arrive to that decision? Well, there are simple things that are going on inside our mind when we make decisions. And my point here is to give you a couple of simple techniques and to improve your decision making and also learn a little bit about what's happening underneath the hood. Are you ready? All right. So first thing, let's jump into it. Let's try your decision making. So I'm going to give you a small problem and a limited amount of time, 5 seconds, to come up with your answer. Are you ready? Go. Did you find your answer? The correct answer is 5. However, let me explain what happened when I saw this the first time. I had 2 parts in my brain working, and the first part actually kept screaming, it's 10 cents, it's 10 cents, it's 10 cents. And I had the second part in my brain that was talking to me and said, no, it's not as easy. It's not that easy. I don't have time. Let's just give way for the first hunch. So if you experienced anything similar to that, what you experienced is the 2 systems that are active in your brain at any point of time making decisions. So these systems are called System 1 and System 2. System 1 is what you might refer to as your emotional decision-making mechanism. So the one when you say you make gut decisions that you do rely more on. System 2 is your analytical decision-making engine. Now, what people get wrong is that one is always preferred over the other. They have different qualities, and you have to, if you know them, you can understand in what situations I should rely on each one. To give you an idea, all right, so System 1 is the one that you rely on when I say complete the sentence, war end. Right, so that's System 1. System 1 is quick, it is creative, it is associative, and it makes binary choices, 1 or 0. System 2, that's your analytical part. So System 2 is the one you use for equations, and System 2 is the one you use to make a prediction on a linear scale. Now, surprisingly, there are situations when System 1 does better than System 2. Would you guess which? Well, I'll give you a hint. Quick, like if you need to make a decision within a second, you have to rely on System 1. But I'll give you another clue. If there are a lot of variables that you need to analyze, then actually System 1 makes better choices normally than system 2. All right, so that's to give you a little bit of insight what's happening inside your brain. Now, one thing that you might rely quite heavily on, and at least what you see when you study media, is that we have to trust expert advice. So expert advice is right. Well, let me share you a statement, and this is a statement from an expert from last year. Now, looking at this statement, we realize now, with the information that we have now, that of course this statement is flawed. And it's also, of course, it's easy to look in hindsight and say this. But interestingly, experts are also humans, and experts are prone to the same biases that we as humans, every human, is prone to. And surprisingly often, experts that have not learned to calibrate their uncertainty do worse than simple quantitative techniques. So one of the biases that we all us as humans are prone to has to do with how we select information that we will base our decision on. So think of this as a pre-step to making up your mind. And a very strong such bias is called confirmation bias. And the idea is that most people do not at all try to test their hypothesis critically. Rather, they start to select information that confirms this. And you've probably seen some traces of this in politics the last number of years. So this is a very strong force. And this is the reason why, if you're a scientist and you make a few experiments and you have a few of them that runs well and supports your hypothesis, why scientists might lean more on that conclusions compared to the experiments that points in another direction. So that's confirmation bias at play. So are there simple techniques you can use to improve your decision making? Yes. So I'll give you one. And this is called the rule of 5. And it's basically a special case of the power of small sampling. And the idea is, the rule of 5 states that there is a 93.75% chance that the median of any population is between the range of the smallest and largest value in a random sample of 5. So what does this mean? Let's explain this in a layman example. Imagine that I put you on a flight to a random country in the world, and with a blindfold. And when you landed, I'm gonna ask you. So, how tall are people here? So give me, what's the median of the height? And of course, you could make up your mind, but by making a guess, it's 1.80 meters. However, there's another technique you could use to find out the same answer. And that technique would be go out in the country, do a random selection of 5, and now you can be fairly confident, a 93.75 confidence here, that the median is between the smallest and the largest value in your random sample of 5. Now, of course, there is some difficulties here as when we're talking about finding a random sample, but I'll leave that for the statisticians to dive into. The important conclusion of this is that when we make decisions, reducing uncertainty has value in itself. So you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to eliminate all uncertainty, but finding simple techniques that eliminates the highest uncertainty is valuable or are valuable. All right. So, that said, how can you improve your decision making? How can you be better than average? Okay, I'm going to give you 4 simple habits that improves your decision making. So first is know your biases. So I'll give you a hint of one that will infer and make an impact on decision making. There are a few more. So understand them, because if you understand them, you can balance them. The second habit is decide how you're going to make up your mind. How are you going to make your decision? This is probably your most important decision. And I gave you a clue on situations where, for example, system 1, you can trust a little bit more, and when system 2 can be trusted a little bit more. And in a real life scenario, for example, imagine that you're in an important leadership meeting and you need to make up your mind. You might ask, so what is the time window for this decision? And with this learning in mind, you can now use techniques that optimizes the information gain in this specific time window. That is deciding on how you're going to decide, compared to just make gut decision saying it's going to be option B, right? The third habit is learn a few quick techniques that helps you eliminate the most uncertainty. And I give you a hint of one, right? There are a couple of more that if you learn and master them, your decision making will be improved. And finally, most importantly, practice. Put yourself in real situations with uncertainty that forces you to make up your mind, and afterwards critically evaluate your stated hypothesis. And this is what most people don't do, is that they don't look back and reflect on how well the previous decisions were. And if they don't do that, they can't learn and they can't start to calibrate their process. So, 4 simple habits of how to make better decisions and how to make decisions better than average.
Thank you so much, Mattias, for sharing this with us and taking the time to be on the show. I found this topic to be so deeply interesting and important myself. But I have a few follow-up questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Fire away.
Fire away. Cool. The first one is, when did this kind of surface to something that you found important to learn more about and to talk more about? Since when is this an important topic for you?
Well, I can actually highlight the situation that pulled me in this trajectory. And the situation was I was in a room with Agile teams, and we had managers in the room, and we were doing visual decision making. So we had visual walls where we have a lot of information. And I pulled one of the leaders of that unit to one of the walls, and I pointed that to the wall. And when I looked at it, the wall kind of screamed, the problem is here. The problem is here. For me, it was so self-evident that there was one area that needed attention from that leader. Right? Here's where you spend your time. Here's the thing. Here's where you should improve things. And I asked the guy, all right, so what do you see? What do you think should be improved? And he turned to me and said, I think it looks good. And I was thinking, like, oh, are we on the same planet? Because it was so self-evident. It was, the evidence was in front of our eyes, literally 2 meters away. And how could he arrive to a conclusion which was, 180 degrees from mine, with the same information in front of him? And that sort of triggered my interest in this topic. And I quickly rule out that it's not the fact that he's not intelligent. So the guy was really intelligent, but there were some things he wasn't paying attention to. And I was trying to understand, why is he filtering out this piece of information? That's where my journey started.
Which kind of leads me to my next question. So now I know that you've been working with leadership and execs for quite some time now, and teaching and coaching. So when you teach and coach these topics about decision making and biases, and run exercises like the one you just showed us, what kind of reactions do you get? How is that perceived?
People lean in, actually, and they become a little bit fascinated by a topic which they thought they knew. And when you give them the examples and they try to put this into practice, they start to discover that there's a lot more to it than they initially, thought. And the good news is, of course, that you can learn a couple of very simple techniques that improves your skills, and that's what I try to show them.
Cool, thank you. And I couldn't help to spot an interesting logotype in the corner of the slides. Active Agile leadership. What's that about?
Very simple. It's about improving leaders and improving the skills of leaders in Agile environments. And that's what the site is for. So the site is there to share content, share learnings, and also share a few trainings. And some of the techniques you just saw is part of one of the modules there, which is called decision making and uncertainty. So it's there to improve skills for leaders in Agile environments.
Cool. And if you're watching this and becoming curious, I will put I will put the link in the description below. So yeah, once again, thank you, Mattias, for taking the time.
My pleasure.
And yeah, I think I'll see you soon again.
I'm sure of it, Jimmy. Take care.
Bye-bye. How about you? How good are you at making decisions? Are you trying to become more aware of your biases? Which techniques do you use? Do you feel the struggle between your two systems when you're trying to decide? I certainly do. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes with guests sharing their insights and experience. And if you like this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And until next time, explore, have fun, and be safe.